Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Yeah. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted you're with us this morning in class. And let me give you out a telephone listen line. If you'd like to listen to this broadcast 24/7 as you travel, and it's live, 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. And if you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. John is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli, and I'm delighted to be broadcasting today with Dr. Doug Leigh. He's a veterinarian, retired, and he devotes his time to helping us on the air with some of our questions about animals. So if you have an animal and you have a question, you've got the number, 866-582-9933. Welcome, Dr. Leigh.
Well, welcome to you. How's the weather?
Well, you know, it's delightful now. I'll tell you, it was miserable for several weeks, but now it's kind of warming up. The sun is coming out. The sun's on the solar panels. It looks like we'll have some electricity today. It's pretty nice. And you're in Springfield, Missouri, just down the road from us a little bit.
Right. Well, we still have cloudy weather right now, and it's still a little cool to keep the dogs and pets outside, so keep them in. So we've had frozen pipes here, too, by the way.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and we've gotten...
The area that we've had frozen pipes in, it's starting to get better, though.
I had a thought about animals, and something that we may not really think about. And it dates back all the way back to the 1950s, through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and some of it might even be around today. And that is, we used to, if you had an old television, and I'm talking like in the 50s or 60s for sure, and someone was watching television in another room, some of us might be able to hear this high-pitched squeal or whine, and you could say, well, the television's on. Even if you didn't hear the audio from the speakers, you knew that the television was on because of the sound of that the picture tube scanning would make. And it would travel, throughout the house. Well, I've been thinking about that, and I've been thinking about cats and dogs, and their hearing is way more sensitive to frequencies that we can't hear very well. So that sound I'm talking about is a little over 19,000 cycles per second, or 19 kilohertz. Well, is that something that you would be concerned about for dogs and cats, hearing sounds that we might have in our house and unintentionally use devices that might drive our dogs and cats crazy, but they can't tell us that they're being driven crazy?
Well, I'm not so sure it drives them crazy. Of course, it does bother them. I wear hearing aids, and these things sometimes squeal. And if the dog is nearby, she looks over to see what the noise is. So they do sense this. I think if it were going to be anything serious, we would have certainly seen some things showing up over the years since it goes back to 50. Now, you're a lot more technical than I am. I don't know. To me, it's just a squeal. You got all kinds of numbers, but it's a squeal. But it does bother them, but I think they probably get used to it. Now, here's a story I want to tell you about. I had a dog one time. The lady brought it in, and she had her house re-roofed. And this dog she left at home for 3 days. They re-roofed this house, and this dog, day by day, became more and more screwy. It's the only way to put it. He was confused. He didn't know what was what. This noise would disturb him. We had to eventually put this dog to sleep because he couldn't tolerate being in this world after having 3 days of guys pounding on the roof, and he has no way of getting out of there. So, yeah, sounds do affect them. And apparently, I guess the high-pitched sound that you're referring to can't be that disastrous, or we certainly would have seen some problems with it by now. But, yeah, this was a very pathetic case with this dog. This lady didn't realize what she was doing. But a good thing, if you're having the house re-roofed, don't leave the dog in the house. It'll drive.
And in that line of thinking, we have an automotive shop as in our garage, which is it's part of our house.
Right.
And the dogs and cats like to go in there, and that's fine with us. The cats look for mice, and that's good. Well, it's cool in the summer, and they like to get out of the sun, and it works well. But we have a compressor, an air compressor in there, and that thing has an automatic switch that when the pressure falls below a certain pounds per square inch, it'll fire up, and it's noisy. So I leave that off when the dogs are in there, and if I'm going to use that compressor, I'll invite the dogs out. I'll say, okay, guys, let's go outside. Let's go outside. And they'll go outside, and then I'll turn on the compressor. And I'll get away from the compressor as well. But I try to make sure that our animals aren't subjected to loud, sudden, piercing noises that can damage hearing for people as well as them. And welding. Sometimes we'll fire up that MIG welder or the arc welder. And when we do that, we know that the dogs are going to want to look at that arc because it's natural to, what is that? And it can damage their eyes. So when we work with the welder and we have a welding, shield on our face and so forth to protect our eyes, we don't let the dogs or cats in the area either. We keep them out of that area so that they can't wander in and see what we're doing. So I just wanted to share those thoughts with this class. And do you agree with that as well?
Oh, yeah, I think that's definitely so, particularly the welding thing. The hearing and all of that they can get away from. But the welding, it's a different thing, and they will tend to look at that arc. Yeah, well, you know what it'll do. Just like the eclipse. They told us not to look at the eclipse for the very same reason you look at a welder. But, I never welded them. Right. My welds never held, so I had to take them elsewhere. I pick it up.
You were in the stitching. Yeah, you were in the stitching business.
That's right. But, I think there is a definite thing to consider. Of course, I'm sure not too many people have welders, except those of us out in the country who maybe need one. But if you have anything like that, could be bright. I even try. My dog sits on my lap, and I'm reading, and she is looking right up at the light. Well, I move her around, or I'll turn the light off if we're not going to be reading, because I don't think it's good for them even to look at lights that much. It isn't good for us. It isn't good for them. So, because they've got eyes. An eye is an eye is an eye, and they all work the same, whether it be a dog or a cat or a wild animal. But they're all the same. Now, what they see, who knows? Nobody can tell you. They just think that they know what the dog and the cat see, but the dog and the cat cannot tell us what they see. So we don't know. Don't know whether they see colors or what. But
How about sleep? Some people will leave noise on in the background. So, for example, I've heard people tell me, "Well, it's just noise, and I want to hear that noise in the background, while I'm cooking or whatever I'm doing." Housewives, mothers, and fathers will say, "I just want to have that noise going on," and I'm wondering, 24/7. Now, typically, people go to work, so they get away from that constant television. But if someone leaves the television on and there's a cat or dog in the house, do you think that is not good for them? Do they need quiet the way Well, some of us need quiet. I want it quiet when I'm sleeping.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they can override the noise situation, just cut it out or whatever they do, because I know our pets sleep through noise or whatever, except for thunderstorms. That's another story. But at any rate, no, I don't think a noise being on bothers them. Now, kennels, dog and cat kennels, will leave music on at night, all the time, sometimes 24 hours a day, just to have something to override what may be going on outside that would distract them. So there may be a little bit of a soothing effect to certain low-level noises in an environment where animals are boarded or kept or living. So I think there's something to that, but I don't think that disturbs them at all.
Dr. Leigh, when you
do anything, yeah.
When you talk about music, we're not talking about heavy metal bands. We're talking more like a classical.
Classical or very quiet, just subdued, not heavy metal. No, that drives me crazy. What's it do? So,
yeah. Okay.
Back in the era when I grew up, the 50s, 40s, 50s, that's the type of music that you really want. So,
okay.
I don't think you were alive at that period, but I was.
Yeah. Well, not in the 40s. I was alive in the 50s. I was born in the early 50s, very early 50s.
I go back to the Mustang era. So anyway, yeah. But no,
so another thing I was thinking about is compact fluorescent lighting, and I believe that the ballasts of these lights and fluorescent lights make a noise that they can hear as well. And I haven't proven it, but I believe it's the case. So I just wanted to share that. So what I've done, believe it or not, is we had, we switched like most people. We had the incandescent lighting, and they said, well, we're going to phase these out because they use too much electricity. And then next thing that happened was the compact fluorescent lights came on the scene, and they were $10, $8, $7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When they got to be relatively inexpensive, we switched. And then we got rid of them because I believe they make noises that the cats and dogs can hear, and I just don't want to put them through that. So that's just a thought that I have about that. And then we switch to the LED lightings. When we come back, I'd like to talk about, what I would call kneading, how the cats, with their paws kind of push into something soft. Dr. Doug Leigh's with us. He's a veterinarian, retired. And I've got a question, Dr. Leigh. We have an English Mastiff, about 200 pounds, about 5 years old, and he's developed what I would consider to be akin to TMJ. Like he'll open his mouth really wide, and he'll seem to get stuck, and then he'll have difficulty closing it. And it happens, a couple times a week. I was wondering is that something that you've seen in your practice before? Is it something that relates to specific breeds of dogs? Is it something that just happens with age? Have you seen that?
No, you got me on that one. No, okay. I haven't.
Okay.
And his jaw gets stuck open.
Yeah, I mean, he can close it. It just he'll let's say he's getting a yawn, like a person would, for example. He'll open his mouth really, really wide, and then he has to kind of shake his head to help it close a little bit easier. And you can see that he's having difficulty doing that. And I was wondering if
can you just close it, close the jaw?
Oh, I'm sure I could, but I haven't done that because I didn't want him to panic. He's able to do it himself. It doesn't stay stuck open, just for it's a transient kind of a thing.
No, I would see if you could close it, or if it is really stuck there, or if it hurts him when you do that.
Okay.
I think you need a little more information to come up with maybe some type of a diagnosis. Now, maybe it could be a breed problem too. That I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You would have to check with some breeders and ask if they have ever heard of that. I would do that first.
Okay. So you're talking about something like with German Shepherds and hip dysplasia like that. That seems to be a problem. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll look into that.
Quite frankly, I have never seen that many big dogs. Remember, I haven't practiced for 50-plus years. So way back, we didn't have that many real big dogs around. You know, we were more going for the biggest thing we saw probably was a pit bull. But these dogs you have are much bigger.
Okay.
And maybe something has developed genetically in their world where they have this. But I can tell you the cure for an old farm cure for a jaw that gets locked, they can't close their mouth. If it ever gets to this point where it gets open and he can't close it, you can't close it, here's a cure. Take a hammer handle or something, or a broom handle, put that in his jaw, and then close it. And what that does, that dislocates the joint back there and brings the jaw down lower so that it can close. So,
is there a risk with doing that? I mean, I'm not talking about getting bitten, but is there a risk to the animal from then on?
No, not at all. It works pretty well, and I've done that.
Okay, so
the hammer handle works real good.
Okay, I've got it. So
now you got your whole
so you put a piece of wood.
Anything.
Yeah, very good. Well, I've never heard that before, but it sounds fascinating. Okay, well,
you got to get in the back bar. So you push it way back as far as you can. Push the jaw up from down to the chin, and that'll pop it back into place. Because
right. So we're talking about actually unhinging it and hinging it.
Right. Exactly. But that puts it back in alignment with the
How about
jaw area. So that's what you can tuck away.
Now, Mrs. Finelli. Mrs. Finelli likes to please the animals, and she will give them a piece of cheese, yellow American cheese, not cheese food, but cheese, and they seem to love it. She'll heat it in a pan with some filtered water, and she'll add that to their food, and they love cheese. Is cheese okay for dogs to eat? Because all of our dogs, the rescue dogs as well as the Mastiff, seem to love it. Is there a problem with cheese?
I see nothing wrong with that. I give our dogs cheese. No problem. I always have. My dogs have only lived normal lives with very little illness. Very little illness. So, no, I see nothing wrong with that. Of course, if you should feed a good quality dog, it would be the basis of the diet. But I'm sure you're doing that. Because I think it's at one point where you were feeding.
Yeah.
But, no, cheese won't hurt.
Yes. Okay, very good. When we come back, let's talk about cats and what they do with their paws and why do they do that. Dr. Doug Leigh, and I'll be right back. Dr. Leigh's with us. Dr. Leigh, I've got an email from one of our class about a cat. The cat's probably 8 to 10 years old, maybe even 12 years old, drinks a lot of water, eats, then vomits, is losing weight, still very active. They've tried different cat food at this house, but the only thing there are a couple things that are different. The cat's doing some strange things that it's never done before, like sleeping on the kitchen table. They've never seen the cat do that before, and the only other thing that's different is there's another cat in the house. Do you have any thoughts about what could cause that?
Yeah, well, the kitchen table thing, that could definitely be from the other cat in the house, because cats and animals, particularly cats, have their own world, and they just live in it, and we have to be part of it, and we don't want to, and that's just tough. It's going to be their way. But that would probably be a result of the other animal there, because they'll do strange things when a new animal, usually a cat, comes into the environment. I mean, there's individuals who never, ever will accept another animal in the household, and they'll go through their entire life for 18, 20 years of never accepting another animal in the house. So that could account for that. Now, as far as the eating, and you say it's losing weight also,
yes.
That animal needs some blood work to see what's going on with the liver, the kidneys, the pancreas, and everything else. Because if you get a lack of appetite or any change in eating, like that, and losses in weight particularly, you really have to get blood work. Now, you could do a couple little things initially to maybe screen. Look at the whites of the eyes, see if they're white. They should be white. If they're yellow, you got problems there with the liver. You got a jaundiced cat. The ears will also tell you the lining of the ears should be nice and clean, not yellow. But the whites of the eyes are the easiest thing to look at. Look at the mouth, too. See what color the gums are. Are the gums pink? Are they white? Are they dark, real dark? They should be healthy and pink. If they're white, you've got a problem with blood. There's either circulatory or either quality of the blood. But you need blood work if you've got an animal doing those things. Now, of course, that involves going to a veterinarian. There's no over-the-counter treatment or diagnosis for that. But, yeah, that's what I would definitely recommend for that.
You know, I think you've given a lot of advice for those who are animal lovers in this class about looking at the mouth and looking at the eyes and looking at the ears. I haven't heard that discussed before, but I really appreciate you helping us with that.
Yeah, it could tell you a lot. Just those couple of areas could tell you a lot.
And I remember Doctors for People used to do things like that. They, for a general examination, a doctor would look in your eyes, say, open wide, put a tongue depressor in, take a look in your ears. Those were standard practices that I don't think happen very much anymore. So thanks for bringing us back to, things that we can look at ourselves.
Well, you mentioned people. One thing I've noticed, doctors don't look at fingernails anymore.
Right.
Years back, they used to look at fingernails, and you could tell a lot from fingernails. I saw a paper or something the other day, I forget, it was from Mayo Clinic, I think it was. Look at your fingernails, and you can tell if you have some problems. Because the ridges and the grooves and the shape and everything else of the fingernails give a lot of information. But they never look at nails anymore.
Mm-hmm. You and I have mentioned a doctor friend, Dr. Norman Shealy, who's on this broadcast and has been for 6+ years, I would say. And there were times that I would have a meal with him, and when we'd be out, and we'd be sitting across the table from each other. Sometimes Mrs. Finelli would be there, sometimes not. And here's what he would do. He would reach across the table. I might say something, and he might acknowledge that I said something he approved of. So he'd reach over, and he would grab my hand, okay? Now, he wouldn't just grab my hand and just touch it. He would hold it for a second. And I believe, and he's never admitted to this or acknowledged it, nor have I ever asked him, but I believe he was giving me a physical examination to check my health, not to see if I was crazy by what I just said, but it was just an opportunity to see the warmth of my hands, whether they're warm or cold, look in my eyes, and watch my gait and make sure that, I'm okay. And I believe that he would do that because I believe doctors who have had lots of experience over the years would look at patients that way. The current class of doctors, I don't think does. Does that make sense to you, what I just said?
Yes, it does. Because, let me tell you another story here. I had a receptionist, and I also have a friend who was a doctor. He came in and he said, she has thyroid problems. I said, how do you know that? He said, look at her eyes. Her eyes are bulging. He said, that's an indication of thyroid. Sure enough, he checked her out. She had thyroid problems. So, yeah, there's a lot of visible things that a doctor can look at and tell. Now, whether they do it these days or they count on the lab, I don't know. But I know everything has to have blood. And that's, I don't know. I came from the old school where you didn't have to have blood. You used a lot of things that were visible. And maybe that's where I got in to look at the eyes, the gums, and the ears, and everything else. So that is one of the... earlier we had mentioned food, and you asked about cheese, and I got thinking when we had the break. I had a client come in one time, and she lived in the country, and she fed her dogs raw chicken. That was the basis of their diet, raw chicken. And I said, where did you get this from? She said, well, there's somebody who advocates this, and it makes a lot of sense to her because animals in the wild ate raw meat and raw birds and raw this and that. And I said, yeah, but, I have personally had to do rectals on animals, and I could feel chicken bones in there. So it is something you don't want to do. But she did it. She had luck with it. She vegetables or something else in the diet, and maybe a little dog food. But, well, I sure wouldn't give raw chicken. That's,
yeah, because of the sharp, because of the sharp bones.
Oh yeah, my God! Take a chicken bone and it doesn't just break in half; it breaks on an oblique angle, and it's got a point, and it's like a needle going in there.
Yeah.
And when I went to veterinary school, being a student, they gave you all the lousy jobs, and one of them was if you had an animal who was impacted, couldn't go to the bathroom, you had to do an enema. And we had pulled chicken bones out of dogs and cats. Well, dogs' rectums, not cats, because cats don't eat that many chicken bones. But dogs will. And, yeah, it was not an uncommon thing to find chicken bones in there. It was a terrible situation. Just imagine how the poor dog felt with those. I don't know.
Yeah. How about this kneading thing? So if I'm on the sofa and I'm reading or I'm watching a YouTube video or something, cat will climb up next to me, and if I have a blanket on me or on my knees, or the cat will like feel with her paws the blanket, and just one paw, front paw after the other, touch it, squeeze it, that kind of thing. And I would liken that to kneading bread. What is it about that? What is it called? And why do they do that?
Well, it's called kneading. Let me go back a second. PBS has a very good program on the evolution of cats, and it's probably on YouTube also. I saw this the other day, and it was very fascinating, the way cats have developed over the eons of years with the dinosaurs in some form or another. There were cats out there, too. But so that is very interesting. Now, I don't remember whether it mentioned kneading or not, but anyway, kneading is a form of marking. Animals mark territories. They mark things. That's why a dog urinates. A male dog is urinating everything he can get his leg on and raise that leg and mark it. He's marking it to let other dogs know that he's been there, because his urine smells one way and another guy smells another way, and they can tell who's who. So that's why they urinate, and or not why they urinate, but they urinate, of course, they come here to the urine, but they do this marking to mark the territory. Now, why does a cat need? Very same thing. They have scent glands in their paws and up in front of their head, front of the ears. You see that little area in there that's very sparsely haired? And when they'll go ahead and they'll rub that on you. They'll rub this on the right side, the left side, all over your legs, your hands. And then they'll need the blanket, they'll need you, they'll need everything. They're marking all of the territory because they smell one way and another cat smells another way, and they can tell the difference. But that's what it is, just territorial marking. They'll have little sweat glands in their feet, too. If you notice, sometimes a cat will walk across the floor or walk on something, and it'll be a footprint there. Those are sweat coming out, so the little perspiration's coming out. Not all the time, but sometimes. So there are sweat glands in there, too. But the two areas are the feet and in front of the head, where they have most of the glands. Those are for marking.
Very interesting. I was cleaning out, blowing the dust out of an inside of a computer that I had in the studio. So I took the computer downstairs and into the garage, and I set it on the concrete pad. I was ready to get the hose, the compressor air hose, and from the garage, and put the nozzle on it and spray out put a respirator on and then spray the dust out. And so I just set it on the concrete right by the corner of the solar array, right next to that. And Thomas Jefferson, our Mastiff, came running over, and the first thing he did was he lifted his leg, and he was going to urinate on the computer, and I guess mark it. And so I said, hey, knock it off. You don't need to mark that, or you don't need to urinate on that. So that was because it was new. Is that what you were saying?
Probably, yes. That could be it, too. And you said that there was some hair in there?
No, well, okay, it was a computer, so it had dust in it. It has the fans that pick up dust. So I'm pretty sure that, if the cats walked by the computer and it got hair in there, sure.
It's probably that it was a new piece of equipment or something new in the house. This is why dogs sniff each other. You separated dogs, and what's the first thing they do? Although they may have lived together, they'll sniff each other and then wag their tail and walk off. It's a strange. They'll do a Class A job of sniffing just to make yes. They spend 5 minutes or so sniffing. Yes. But, that's the way to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Dr. Doug Leigh is with us. Dr. Leigh, we've got a male cat, and actually we have 4 cats. 3 cats, 2 females and a male get along just great. They like being inside, and they just get along fine. They have their arguments every once in a while, but for the most part, they get along fine. Well, this other cat that we have, who has been altered, a male cat, beats up the other cats whenever he sees them. And so the male cat who doesn't get along with the other cats, that male cat likes to spend time in the garage. The other cats spend most of their time in the house, but we have to keep them separated when they go outside, because that one cat who lives in the garage will beat up the other cats. Is that something that'll abate over time, or is this going to be it's been going on for a couple of years now? Do you think it could ever stop?
If it's been a couple of years, I would say probably not. I mean,
okay.
I mentioned earlier that, there are cats that never do get along with other cats, go for their whole life never getting along. But I would say if you were going to have any compatibility, it would have certainly happened by now. The other 3 get along fine. You got this one, for some reason, he just doesn't like it. Maybe he's envious or something. You'll never know, because it's a cat, and they got their own way of doing things and own reasons for doing it. But, I don't think you'll ever see that change. But you have to physically separate them then, huh?
That's right. If they see, the one cat who is the warrior, the one who lives in the garage, his name is Red. He's an all-black cat, but we call him Red. And so Red, if he sees one of the other cats outside, if he sneaks out, he will just race after that cat and pounce on it and attack it, as if they are they've been enemies for a long time. Now, the 3 cats who get along do absolutely nothing to antagonize Red, but Red doesn't tolerate them being on his property.
That's just about right. It's territorial.
Okay. How about this?
That's a full-time job trying to keep them separated, isn't
it? Yeah, but Red is such a good mouser. He will find mice, and he's probably one of the few cats that we have who actually does a really good job of finding mice and eliminating them from causing damage around the farm. He's the best mouser we have, so we
How does he
put up
mold?
with.
Does he
Excuse
get
me?
mold?
Yes. Yep.
That's what I need out here, a mole cat.
Well, I'll tell you what. If Mrs. Finelli wants to part with him, I'll give you a call. But she really loves Red. How about what we found? Now, the 3 cats who spend most of their time inside. In the middle of the night, they will jump on the bed and they don't want to get off. Like if we're asleep, they'll jump on the bed and they'll curl up and we'll pick them up and say, knock it off, knock it off, knock it off. And they have short memories. They don't remember that 3 seconds ago, we escorted them off the bed. Is there a way of breaking the cats of sleeping on beds?
Yeah, keep them out of the room. That's about it. You're going to be up all night chasing them.
We leave our bedroom doors open so that if there's a sound that we need to hear, pay attention to. If someone, has a problem, we keep the doors open. So, okay, I was thinking maybe, a squirt gun might be, with water might be.
Yeah, but probably come right back, I think. They want to be with you, and for some reason the bed's a pretty cozy place, and when they get on there, they like to cuddle up and touch you for some reason. If they have that, they want to. They don't want to be down the foot of the bed. They want to be cuddled up where you are. And that's just instinctive of the cats, I think, when it comes to people. And they're very sociable with people, and that's part of their program. You'll have a tough time breaking them of that. If you haven't gotten it broken from the beginning, it's a tough one to go ahead and do, because they'll sneak up there in the middle of the night somehow and get onto that bed. But, I've had this problem with dogs, too. I'm familiar with it. And, quite frankly, just give up after a while and say, come on, welcome.
Yeah. Dr. Leigh, we have spent a whole hour together. I want to thank you for being with us and sharing your expert advice and counsel with our broadcast classroom. Thank you again for spending time with us.
Sun's coming out in Springfield.
We'll see you next time. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. This hour, we're going to be talking about radio frequency dangers. We're going to be talking about wireless communications. And we're going to be talking about cell phone jammers with Bert Bertonis. Bert Bertonis has been a Silicon Valley engineer for 40-plus years. He's an electrical engineer, patent holder, designer, expert witness, and he's been a CEO in Silicon Valley for well over 40 years. Also serves on the boards of directors of other corporations in California. Welcome, Bert Bertonis.
Hi, Vince. Glad to be here.
You know, Bert, I was thinking about the time I was at a restaurant, and well within a year from today, and I was thinking about how people have cell phones in their pockets, and as soon as they sit down at the table at the restaurant, they take their cell phones out, put them on the table. And many of them don't realize that they can be turned on, the speakers can be turned on, the cameras can be turned on remotely, and they're just not aware of it. And then if you were to go to an Olive Garden restaurant, they have these little devices. They're triangular shaped, and they sit on the table, and they're great for entertainment. You know, the little ones at the table can be distracted by playing video games on them. And they can communicate with the wait staff. You can order, you can pay your bill with these devices, and they're wireless, and they have microphones and cameras in them. So people will turn them so they can look at them, and when they can look at these devices can have the camera pointed right at these people. And I believe that, you know, it's an invasion of privacy. So when you put all this together, you know, that kind of technology, the cameras that are in the ceilings pointing down and watching the people who are dining, the customers in establishments, and all of this spying and tracking and monitoring and recording and all of this, some people are just sick of it. And so there is the reason why some people might want to have jammers to stop this nonsense. And so I just did a quick search on the internet just as the top of the hour news was playing, and there I just typed in cell phone jammers. Heck, you can buy direct from China cell phone jammers, and but I don't know if they are legal in the United States, but you can buy them, and they will jam these frequencies. Have you encountered such devices in your area of expertise?
They have come up, and I am aware of them, and you know, you can buy them, and it's not, you don't always buy them direct from China. You can purchase them for good or for worse from companies that ship locally, and of course they are illegal. It's illegal to manufacture one. It's illegal to sell one. I'm not sure it's illegal to own one. I think that's extending beyond where our legal system goes. But, you know, I have mixed thoughts, and I guess since we're talking about RF safety, providing a jamming signal to jam other transmitters is, in a sense, already making matters worse. So I'm certainly not encouraging the use of them, but it is funny, and we just had somebody in Silicon Valley who was distracted. Drivers were driving him crazy because he couldn't get to work on time, so he would drive through rush hour with a jammer so people couldn't text, and they'd pay attention and not hold him up on his commute, and they finally caught the guy.
So let me see if I've got this right. So we're talking about a guy who's on his way to work every day, bumper to bumper, side to side, going down the highway, and he's had it. He's annoyed with people looking down at their phones, texting, hardly paying attention to the vehicles all around them, and he's just annoyed, and he just is going to put a stop to it. So he gets a jammer, and he jams their cell phone signal so they can't text, tweet, talk, those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, we don't have awards. If we did, I'd probably give him one.
Yeah, I guess that goes along with the guy who drives with a dummy in the passenger seat so he can drive in the commute lane.
Well, I see a difference there. One is the guy is just annoyed with people not paying attention around him, and the other guy is trying to skirt the regulations about the high occupancy vehicle. But I got to hand it to the little guy who is clever. And I don't always agree with what they're trying to do, but I like ingenuity, and I've read those stories about the guy doing that. He wants to get to work faster, so he's going to skirt the system, or he's going to push the limits, and he's going to fake his way through it. So I was just wondering about the cell phone jammers, and if I'm in a vehicle, and I'd kind of like the idea of not being invaded. So let's say I have an acquaintance, and we decide we're going to ride together to someplace. Let's say it's going to be a couple-hour trip, and we're in the vehicle, and I don't have a cell phone, but he does. And I go, I really don't want our conversation to be monitored, remotely by someone in law enforcement or one of the agencies or, part of the government. I just don't want it. But do I say to this guy, hey, put your cell phone in the trunk? He may say, yeah, but I've got these important texts that are coming in, and customers and clients, and I've got to be tethered to this device. I've got to be on tap 24/7. I can't put it in the trunk. So I decide I'm not even ask him, and I'd like to just have that thing not work, not being able to be recorded. Is the only way to do that, to stop that, is to jam it? Is there another way, or is that it?
Well, interesting you mentioned that. There's a new option for iPhones in the current iOS that actually detects when you're in your car, and this is a voluntary decision you make, but you can turn off ability to text on your phone while you're in your vehicle. And so that's one way. As far as distraction, yeah, I don't know how else you can do it. But in terms of interception, that's changed a lot. When the first generation cell phones came out, they just basically used FM modulation. This was Gen 1, and you could pick those signals up on any commercial scanner. And in our laboratory, we had various kinds of spectrum analyzers and receiving equipment, and I could very easily tune the spectrum analyzer to the cell phone band and tune through basically the entire band of transmissions. And we had a FM demodulator built into our spectrum analyzer, and we could tune into virtually every cell phone conversation that was out there. Harder to do now because we have very advanced digital coding, and it's not intended to be necessarily, it wasn't done to be secure, but that's the outcome of it. So it's very hard to synchronize with that signal and perform the demodulation. Law enforcement can do that, but the average equipment you can buy has to be order of magnitude more sophisticated in order to intercept and demodulate those signals currently.
All right, so let me see if I've got this right. So if I'm in a restaurant, which is very rare, but let's say I were, or let's say a person of interest by law enforcement were in a restaurant meeting with some other person, and are you saying that if one of them starts using his cell phone, that currently law enforcement has technology to listen in on that conversation from a police vehicle in the parking lot? Is that what you're saying?
They can, but it's well, first of all, they need a warrant, but they can, but it's much more expensive and sophisticated equipment than it was, let's say, 10, 15 years ago.
Okay. And can they do that, like if you watch some of these television shows, like Chicago Police? I've seen some of the episodes of Chicago Police, and they kind of allude to having sophisticated tracking devices. They can find out where a person is based on his or her cell phone unique identifier. Are we saying that they don't even need to be within radio range? They can do this across town where they're out.
Sure, that works a little differently, because what happens is your cell phone is always transmitting your location to the tower. So first of all, you detect what tower you're communicating with, and that gives you a close proximity. But then your GPS information also tells the system where you are. So they do it basically by going through the cell phone system, not talking directly to your phone.
Okay. There's a story about a couple young people from our neck of the woods in Missouri, and they were jailed. And what happened is they befriended the jailer, who was a young female. And while they were in jail, they befriended her and were able to make an escape from jail. And they hopped in a vehicle and took off and went out of state right away. They were caught the next day because they used their cell phone. Is this cell phone tracking, is this something that can be turned off or not turned off on a cell phone from law enforcement? Is there a way that a person could still have his or her cell phone and yet not be tracked? Is that possible or not possible? Do you know?
I would say it's not possible, because as long as your cell phone's on, that's working, and really your cell phone's always on. So to defeat it, you'd have to pull the battery out of the phone. So here's what a lot of people don't know is even when you're not using your...
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Bert Bertonis is with us, electrical engineer and CEO. Bert, we're talking about cell phone tracking, and we're talking about, can you get away from being tracked where you are, your location, if you have a cell phone? Is there a way around it? And you were starting to talk about, no, you can't get away from it if you have a cell phone, and you're talking about the battery.
Yeah, so what a lot of people don't realize is the cell phone is actually always transmitting a ping to the cell phone tower. If you think about it, when you receive a call, how does the system know where you are if it isn't constantly tracking where you are? Make sure you're routed to the proper cell phone tower. So your cell phone, it's not a high-duty cycle, but it is constantly transmitting and receiving to synchronize with the cell phone tower. So that's how people can be found. You know, if you rob a bank and you have your cell phone in your pocket, you can be tracked by law enforcement.
Okay, so if you take and I understood that even if your battery says it's dead, it's really not dead because it still has an additional undisplayed reserve power in it. Is that true as well?
Well, if the LCD's not lighting up, then it's pretty much a dead battery. And I'm not saying go by what the bar graph says. Go by, is it working or not?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So are we saying at this point that if a person does not want to be tracked, and I don't want to be tracked. Now somebody could say, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, what's wrong with being tracked? Well, I don't want to be tracked. I just want my privacy. I want my anonymity, and I don't want to be tracked, and that's why I don't have a cell phone. But so are you saying that regardless of what the cell phone is, if it's a current production cell phone, maybe within the last 5 years, it's got built-in tracking, and that's all there is to it?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. What about the old flip phone? Some people will say, I just have an old antique. It's a flip phone. Are they tracked as well?
Well, some of them may not have GPS, but they will know where your proximity to the tower is. There was a case of some people who got stranded in the winter in Oregon. It was a famous story here. They took a wrong turn and were stranded, and at first they knew approximately where they were by the cell phone tower that their phone was communicating with. Unfortunately, they never found them in time. The husband died, and the wife did walk to safety. So that generation of phones had ability to find them within, let's say, 1,000 feet or of radius or so of the cell phone tower, but not the actual GPS location.
Okay. So if someone said to you, and don't answer this if you don't want to, but if someone said to you, you know what, I think I need a cell phone for those emergency situations, and the flat tire always comes up. I could have a flat tire and I need to call somebody. If someone wanted to have a cell phone and they also wanted to be as private as possible, is there a recommendation to minimize that pinpointing of exactly where you are within a couple feet? Is it that old flip phone?
Well, I'm not sure they would still work, but my suggestion would be get a CB radio. That technology is alive and well and still being used.
Okay. And is there a small CB radio? We're talking about citizens band, unlicensed, just like you don't have to have a license for a cell phone. Is there a citizens band radio that you can think of that are they currently in production?
Oh, absolutely. They're very prolific and still widely used. And if you're asking, can you get a portable one? Absolutely. The problem with a portable one is if you're using it, constantly inside your vehicle, the antenna may not be effective because it's basically unless you stick your head out the window, the antenna is going to be radiating inside the vehicle and not getting the best reception and transmission. But you can buy portable handheld ones, all channels, and you can buy one you can mount in your dashboard, and you can even buy it combined with a radar detector.
Well, that sounds kind of neat. Yeah. Okay. When we come back, I've got some questions for you about your thoughts on the correlation with cancer and radio frequency. We'll be right back. Bert Bertonis. So, Bert Bertonis, we're talking about cancer and radio frequencies. Do you have concerns about that?
Absolutely. It's something that's been in the news on and off for many years, and the bottom line is it's still not fully understood. And, I think I summarize it this way. I think there's some devices and frequencies and power levels that we know are safe. At least we're fairly confident they're safe. There's some we absolutely know are dangerous. And then there's some in the middle where we need to research more and really do more analysis and study. And I can give you examples of each if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to safety, I think your AM radio that's maybe in your living room or in your bedroom, your transistor radio. Importantly, I'd say Bluetooth headsets. Those are fairly low levels of radio frequency. And, at this point, let me mention that radio frequency power levels sort of exist logarithmically. And what I'm getting at is there's a huge variation in power levels. Not, 10 times more from one device to another, or even 100. It's like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or even a billion times different power levels. So Bluetooth, to throw out a numbers, typically about 10 milliwatts. And typically it's used in headsets, it's used in, wireless mice, things like that. Cell phone, on the other hand, is as high as 600 milliwatts, which is many times higher than 10 milliwatts. And you might be holding that phone up to your head, which is near what we call near field coupling. So that's another thing, is that near field to far field can be as much as 40 dB, which is 10,000 times difference in power level. So something that's, say, your power meter that's at the other side of your house and transmitting at 100 milliwatts, you're basically picking up such a low power level from that it's insignificant. However, your cell phone being held very close to your brain at relatively high power is something potentially dangerous, and we've gotten to the point where the FCC does limit the power that's directed toward your head on all new cell phones. But even that said, it's recommended that you use a Bluetooth headset or hands-free of one sort or another. We also know, for instance, that ham radio operators have a higher occurrence of cancer and leukemia, and that's typically because they're sitting in their bedroom under a high-power, maybe 1,000-watt transmitter that's radiating at maybe 20 megahertz, so you're almost near field because wavelength is fairly long, meaning you're within a wavelength of the transmitter, and that's shown to have been dangerous. So, so as I said, it varies from device to device. You can't just say, oh, all radio devices are harmful or vice versa.
When I was growing up, a neighbor had a ham rig, and he would key the microphone, and it would twist the signal on the television screen, and you could tell when he was transmitting, and you just couldn't watch, black and white TV. I'm talking back in the 60s, early 60s. And he died of cancer at a very young age. I'm talking like in his 40s. It seemed pretty young to me. And a neighbor of mine down the road here in Missouri, a ham operator, just died of cancer. He's one of our class members here at USA Prepares. He died of cancer. And so, from my perspective, I can see firsthand evidence of what I believe is cancer and RF links, no question in my mind. Now, I can't prove it for sure, but I absolutely believe what you're saying is true. So here's a question I have. So I'm looking at the possibility of doing a remote broadcast. We're thinking of putting a convention together with some broadcasters, and I might need to do a remote broadcast. And what that means is I have to take a personal, a PC with me, a notebook, computer. I've got to have wire for the internet, a microphone mixer, a microphone, cables, power supplies, extension cords, power strip, all that stuff to broadcast remotely. Or I could get a smartphone and not have it hooked up to a contract, not have it, no cell phone contract, no prepaid card, not configured to operate with cell towers, but I could configure it for Wi-Fi and just have a smartphone-sized device that I take with me in a small headset, and I could broadcast with that. Is there the same danger with that kind of a device as with using a smartphone with cell phone communications? What I'm talking about is using Wi-Fi and Skype.
So I think your question is using Wi-Fi versus the cell phone network?
Yes.
Well, they're both potentially high power. So the thing is that with a cell phone and also with Wi-Fi, you typically have a power control loop, and what that does is it'll maintain the same power at the receiver, but what happens is if you're indoors or your connection's bad, it'll boost the power of your cell phone. So if you're worried about safety, probably I would say the best thing to do is use your cell phone. It doesn't matter if it's on Skype via Wi-Fi or cellular, but use a Bluetooth headset. Use that to talk and communicate with, and just put your cell phone in another location, and you'll be fine.
All right, so let me ask you this. Do you have a feel for when the cell phone signal or the Wi-Fi signal to a cell phone degrades to the point where it's relatively safe? Is it 3 feet? Is it 50 feet? What is it? Do you have a feel for that?
Well, so you're asking a difficult question because, the studies are really incomplete on this. But I can tell you that to go from near field to far field, you want to be a couple of wavelengths away. And I'll just throw out real rough numbers, a foot away. And there's a big difference. In other words, your cell phone up against your head versus 1 foot away is, all the difference in the world. Maybe 1,000 times less power to kind of put it, wrap something around that.
All right. So let's say I didn't have this cell phone with me, used just connected to Wi-Fi as a Wi-Fi device to broadcast, if I were to have one of those. Even if I didn't have one and I went into a room where I could use one, I'd still be blasted with Wi-Fi, right? And all the other cell phones in people's pockets. So I'm still immersed in this, right?
Yeah, there's the Wi-Fi is getting used more and more, and they're making the cells smaller and smaller. So as people get interference, they're buying Wi-Fi extenders, and all that does is put up another hotspot that either repeats the signal you have or changes it to another channel and repeats it. So as things become more and more congested, they actually people are adding more signals, which then in turn makes it more congested. So there's almost no end in sight. We're just, Wi-Fi signals are getting very, very dense. I mean, here at my company where we have a lab and we can, do signal analysis, I mean, from our office, we can see, probably upwards of 40 different Wi-Fi signals from different companies and residences, and it's pretty amazing.
All simultaneous, correct?
Well, all simultaneous, but it doesn't mean that the transmitters are constantly broadcasting full power simultaneous. That takes a little more analysis to determine what the various power levels are, but all potentially transmitting at full power at any given time.
All right.
Even the signal strength that you see, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's sending packets at that instant. It just means that that's the potential signal strength.
All right. So since I'm concerned about these things, I'm going to ask you the next question. I've been doing some reading about wireless charging. So now Vinny's concerned about traveling. He doesn't like traveling. He doesn't like to go into restaurants because of all these Wi-Fi signals, plus the cell phone signals, plus all wireless cameras, all of this put together. I don't want to be there. Now, to make matters worse, I'm reading about charging devices wirelessly. So now, let's say I were to go into one of these environments, a convention room or a restaurant or somebody's house, and they've got this emerging bleeding edge with a B, technology that is charging their device, or they want to get one as soon as it comes out, so they don't have to do what? They don't have to plug their cell phone into a 4-foot cord to charge it. So they want to do it wirelessly. What about do you have any, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but do you have any concerns about this, or is it just me?
No, I think it's a terrible idea. First of all, it doesn't really work, which is amazing how it's getting a lot of press, and it's being demonstrated at the CES, which is going on in Las Vegas right now as we talk. But it's a really bad idea. It's also not efficient, because remember we were just discussing how radio waves fall off in strength very rapidly as soon as you get a couple of wavelengths from the transmitter. So we're talking about devices that probably are at best, I mean, if you absolutely design the best beamforming antennas, probably only 1% efficient. The rest of the energy just being wasted in the air. So not really useful, but potentially harmful, because we're just adding more RF radio waves in the air. It's causing additional interference, which is, I think the FCC is probably going to change their mind on this when they realize that it's not serving any useful purpose for communications, which is what we're supposed to be using the radio waves for. And then finally, of course, the danger. I mean, why, when you can plug a cell phone or whatever device you have that you'd want to charge, when you can just easily plug it into a U.S.
Bert Bertonis is with us. He's the CEO of a corporation in California, a leading-edge communications designing company. And Bert, I've been thinking about what you've been saying about this wireless charging thing. So, if I were to enter a room and there was a sign on this room that said, let's say it's a convention room, and it said featuring wireless charging, as if they're boasting about this feature in that room, I'd have to be crazy to want to go in that room. Is that right?
Especially if it's showing prototypes that haven't even been approved by the FCC, and also the FDA is also going to be responsible for approvals. So yeah, I would not go in.
Okay. Well, so what I did was during the break I went to eBay and I looked up wireless charger, because eBay is a worldwide marketplace and they've got a lot of product offerings. So I'm looking at this wireless cell phone charger, and they're doing their darn best job to not show the wire. And really what this is instead of plugging an electronic device into a charger with a thin cord attached to a little wall transformer, what they do is they have a cord attached to the wall to it's almost like a hot plate warmer, a tiny, thin hot plate warmer, and just put your phone on it. But you still have that darn cord. It's ridiculous. Yeah. You might as well, okay, am I wrong, or why not just plug the cord into the device?
Well, you're absolutely right, and it's so funny because some of these are Rube Goldberg-type contraptions that are really just contrived to figure out how to get around FCC rules, but really aren't doing anything useful, except maybe, showing off the fact that they're claiming wireless charging. By the way, there is a wireless charging that's very effective and totally safe, and that's the charging pads that they're putting in Starbucks and other places, where you simply place your phone down on the pad, and it's done not through radio frequency, it's done through induction coupling. It's very efficient. It's very safe because, your body isn't near there. It's just a very tight coupling between transducer in the cell phone and a transducer in the charging pad. And that, works very effectively. It still takes a little time, so you got to sip your coffee, but I don't see any potential danger with using charging pads.
Okay, now are we talking about modifying the cell phone itself so that it can accept this charging pad type charging, or can you just take your cell phone out of your pocket and put it on there without any change to your cell phone at all?
Well, both. So if you have a new cell phone, new iPhone 10 does have wireless charging and the ability to do that, and some other competing phones have that ability as well, the newest Samsung phones. And you can also buy an attachment that you can put on your existing phone to do the same thing. So you can do it either way. Again, though, as useful as it sounds, it's so easy to just simply plug your phone into a USB cord. And, that's the simplest and safest and most effective of all.
Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that the USB type charging devices seem to be becoming more and more widespread in their use. So, for example, blood pressure cuffs, and they have these small electronic blood pressure monitoring devices. They have a cable that has a USB charger. So it seems like USB, this 5-volt DC system, seems to be taking off and becoming more and more of a standard for small electronic devices. Am I right in that, or?
Oh, absolutely. Your home electrical plugs now come with it.
Yeah, absolutely right. Bert, thank you so much for being with us. I'm looking forward to doing more broadcasting with you, talking about what's happening in Silicon Valley, the latest emerging technologies, the concerns, and the features and the benefits. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Sure, Vince. Glad to be with you.